During a diplomatic mission on Earth, the Princess of Mars is assassinated. This causes the fragile peace treaty between the two worlds to break, leading Martian forces to invade Earth and leaving this guy to be humanity's sole hope. But why then? When new information about the assassination surfaces, are they still bent on conquering Earth? Well, come sit down. Let's find out. We start things off in an unknown location, with Princess Salem of Mars talking to her Discord moderator and Tier 3 sub, Slain. She's asking him various questions about his birthplace of Earth, as she's never been there herself and is only now visiting for political reasons. As he begins to answer her questions, he becomes nervous over the sustained and intense eye contact she's giving him. Don't worry, I feel you, buddy. I'd be nervous too. This dickhead Count Crucio then walks in, informing the princess of how late it's gotten, and Slain promises to finish answering her questions about Earth tomorrow. We then zoom out and see this massive, kinda janky CGI looking ship orbiting just above Earth, with the moon in the background missing a massive chunk out of it. Elsewhere, down on Earth in Japan, we meet Inoho, cooking up a mad breakfast, when his sister, Warrant Officer Yuki, sleepily walks in. He asks her if she wants an omelette or scrambled eggs, and when she says omelette, he says, "Gotcha, bitch, I only made scrambled eggs." He then reminds her of the shift that she is running as drill instructor for today, which at this point, she is running late for. He then refuses to elaborate any further, and just leaves the house. We then get a quick history rundown from some of Inoho's friends on the bus, and we learn the answer to the question of, why is the moon fucked? Basically, when the Apollo 17 mission in 1972 was on the moon, instead of just finding some cool science rocks, they found remnants of an ancient civilization. One of these remnants was a hypergate, which opened a door from the moon to Mars, beating Musk to the punch and allowing humanity to settle and terraform the planet. However, Mars is also where all that good alien tech known as Aldnoah was, and the settlers, beginning to believe that they, due to now having this tech, were superior, split off from Earth, declaring themselves the Ver's Empire. After many years, the tensions between the two planets eventually culminated in the first Martian-Earth War, during which, after a long battle on the surface of the moon, the hypergate eventually went out of control, going... This event is referred to as Heaven's Fall. They eventually arrive at their school, where we see them training in mechs known as the KG-6, which is an older training model of those developed to combat the Martian mechs known as Cataphract. Yuki then arrives late, and begins to apologize for being late, to seemingly no one, when Lieutenant Maruto walks in, getting a bit sauced up in the AM. Maruto tells Yuki that she will be guiding the live fire training exercises for the day, and she begins to instruct her class. We then cut to Maruto sometime later in a bar, where his doctor is trying to convince him to stop drinking so heavily, but Maruto counters by saying it's what he needs to keep pushing through. He says he feels guilty for training and indoctrinating these high school kids into thinking that they would really stand a chance if the Martians were to attack for real, recalling an incident that happened 15 years ago, when his entire unit was completely and utterly destroyed by just one of the Martian cataphracts, an event which has since been covered up. Elsewhere above Earth, Salem says her goodbyes to Slain, thanking him for all the knowledge he has given her about Earth, which she believes will be useful in the coming days. Slain then gives her his necklace as a gift, which after some hesitation, she accepts. Count Crucio then walks in, informing the princess that she needs to get going. After they leave, Count Crucio walks over and bitch slaps the shit out of Slain, telling him to keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth! Nah, he just tells Slain to remember his place as lowly Terran scum. Afterwards, we see Crucio talking to his colleague Sarsbaum, who talks about how despite it being horrible if it were to happen, if the Terrans were to do something to the princess while she was on her diplomatic mission, they could possibly benefit from it. Back on Earth, we then see two men talking in a truck, saying that their years of laying low are finally about to pay off. We then see the motorcade belonging to the Princess of Salem, being observed by Inoho and his friends as it makes its way through the city. We then see some shady people talking on phones and taking pictures of the motorcade, when the doors on a truck in a parking lot above open up, revealing guided missiles which begin to launch towards the princess and her entourage. Inoho then calmly watches as the missiles streak through the sky, heading towards the motorcade, before, even more calmly, telling his friends casually, we should get out of here. I think this main character might actually just be a psychopath. A missile then hits several of the escort vehicles, but the limousine housing the princess escapes undamaged. Just when they thought everything might be fine, 2 missiles hit at once. After the impact, the princess then manages to crawl out of the limo, but one final missile finishes her off. Elsewhere, Count Sarsbaum, seemingly somehow ready for this act of terrorism, claims to the other orbital knights surrounding Earth that the princess's heartfelt wish for peace has been mercilessly crushed by this violent act from the treacherous Terrans. In response to this, the Ver's Empire finally gets the opportunity to put into action their generational plan known as Operation Earthfall, leading to 19 of the 37 landing castles that are in Earth's orbit descending down onto the planet. Which, if you don't know, is like the end of World War II, but happening everywhere. Following this, despite the united forces of Earth doing their best to offer any kind of counterattack, the Martians' landing castles, along with their cataphracts armed with Aldnoah tech, completely no-diff Earth's united armies. They then destroy the undersea cables and geostationary communication satellites around Earth, heavily damaging the UFE's ability to communicate and meaning you can't browse Reddit no more. Elsewhere, inside his landing castle in Tokyo, Crucio comments that their assault is going as expected. Orbital Knight Trilram then enters the bridge and suggests that they begin their advance of Shinawara right away. He then asks for permission to lead the assault, stating that once they plant their banner at the scene of where the princess was assassinated, their cause here will be righteously solidified. Crucio then grants him permission to do so. In the Shinawara district, while preparing to evacuate, Inoho finds 2 girls and begins to inform them about how they need to evacuate, when one of the girls grabs his arm and after apologizing, pins him to the ground. She then asks him what the evacuation is for, like she herself wouldn't have just heard about or seen the massive destruction that just rained down on Earth. Anyway, Inoho informs them about the assassination of Princess Asalem. The girl then reveals to him that Asalem actually became ill shortly after touching down on Earth due to the differing levels of gravity on the planet, and that it was actually a body double that died, and not the princess herself. After finding that information interesting, Inoho then informs them that there should be a transport vehicle coming along soon, as he texted his friend Inko to come pick him up. After they're picked up, they begin to make their way to a ferry which will take them to a more safe location, when they then bump into Yuki, who is piloting the more advanced combat-ready KG-7. She warns them to leave the area as this entire location is expected to become a battlefield shortly. Elsewhere, we see Slane piloting a sky carrier, which he uses to take Trilram and his cataphract to the Shinawara district. On their way, however, they are attacked by a squadron of F-22s, and while all of their missiles are direct hits, the cataphract is dealt no damage. Slane is told to attack them, but is unable to pull the trigger as they are his own countrymen. However, Trilram has no such issues, displaying this by taking control of the sky carrier and decimating the F-22s. On the ground, Yuki is informed that the fighters have just been wiped out, and elsewhere we see a group of civilians standing on a bridge, saying that their ride is here as they see the sky carrier beginning to approach, revealing that these people are the Ver's agents which carried out the plan to assassinate the princess under Trilram's orders. Trilram then lands right in front of them, coats his cataphract with the power of Aldnoah, before reaching out, striking, and completely erasing them from existence, with Trilram saying that he couldn't possibly have let them live, due to the potential of them going on and spreading this information around. The leader's daughter Rayat watches in horror as this happens, and tries to run away as Trilram chases after her. He then has about 100 chances to actually reach out and finish her off, but instead, like a dumbass, just chooses to walk at her, giving time for several KG-7 pilots to begin engaging him with ineffective bullets, which somehow distracts him enough for him to forget about the loose end as he turns his attention towards them. Yuki then makes her way over to Rayat and picks her up. She then watches on as Trilram effortlessly destroys her entire squad, leaving only her and Marito left. Marito, after running out of ammo, then says fuck it, we ball, and runs at the mech that destroyed his entire squad with only a knife, trying to give enough time for Yuki to escape. And well, surprise, his mech disintegrates upon contact with Trilram's mech, who then slices his mech in half. Yuki then manages to escape holding Rayat in her hands, and meets up with the transport and tells them to take Rayat. She tells them to get out of there now as Trilram arrives. He punches Yuki onto the transport and she is knocked unconscious. The driver then, desperately wanting to piece out of this situation, leaves the vehicle, only to be completely smashed up by some flying debris. Inko then takes the wheel and begins to drive away with the KG-7 attached on the back. As they're driving, Okisuke climbs onto the roof of the vehicle, trying to reach Yuki's mech to save her, but is then thrown from the vehicle. Inoho then manages to grab onto him. Just then, Trilram smashes onto the ground, leaving Inoho unable to hold on, who watches as Okisuke falls up and is disintegrated in a Trilram's mech. This is his face moments after seeing one of his best friends become nothing in front of his eyes. Bro thinks he's actually him. They then make their way into a tunnel, which causes Trilram to stop following them for the moment. Inaho then opens Yuki's cockpit and hears Marito on the radio, apparently fine, stating that Trilram is in his mech and is still pursuing them. He then asks them to lure him away from the ferry. Inaho then states that this tunnel leads close to the school, where their mechs are with live ammo, and that since his sister and her squad tried to fight, they should too. Here's a great counteroffer though.
How about no?
Elsewhere, Sarsbaum asks Trilram about whether or not he's cleaned up all of the loose ends yet, and when Trilram states that he's not, Sarsbaum is angered at his failure and the fact that he's lost track of where Rayat has gone to hide. Sarsbaum, due to the fact that they do not have her location, wishes to just blow the entire city up using meteor bombardments. But Trilram reminds him that Crucio's landing castle is in Tokyo, and he would view this as an attack against him. Sarsbaum says this is a necessary risk, and orders him not to let Rayat escape, as it will take several hours to organize the strike. Meanwhile, Yuki awakes in a schoolroom which has been changed into a makeshift hospital, and is told by the doctor about Inaho and his plans to fight the Martian cataphract. Sometime later, after running a few experiments, Inaho deduces, using his big main character plot brain, that Trilram cannot see out of his cataphract, due to the fact that his cataphract has something called an annihilation barrier, and instead relies on the use of cameras that are most likely in the sky. So whatever they end up trying to do, they will only have one shot at it. They then decide that himself, Inko, and Calm will pilot the cataphracts, but require 2 others for the decoy truck, which causes Rayat and the other girl to volunteer for reasons of revenge. With a plan now formulated, they decide to attack on the morning of the next day. As the sun rises, nearby, Marito has managed to assemble a small crew to rescue the remaining soldiers and civilians that might have been left behind, and they are joined by Captain Magbaraj, who has developed a certain interest in Marito. Just then, they notice 3 red flares going off in the distance, which Yuki has fired, meaning that their attack is commencing. As planned, Rayat drives the truck carrying Inaho in his KG-6 on the back, flanked by Calm and Inko in their own suits. Trilram's cameras then instantly spot the truck and notice Rayat driving the vehicle. Yuki then tells the civilians in the school that now is their chance to move out and to follow her. Inko then spots Trilram in his cataphract, and Inaho spots the cameras that Trilram must be using to be able to see. The KG-6s then begin to fire smoke grenades at the cameras, effectively blocking off his ability to see them. As they continue to block his sight off, we see Yuki leading her squad of civilians out of the tunnels, where Marito and his team manage to find and secure them. Slane then unexpectedly begins to fly his ship into the battle, where he is ordered by Trilram to act as his eyes, and after finding out the location of Rayat, begins to walk towards her vehicle. Calm and Slane then have a small exchange of gunfire, with Slane scoring a hit and causing his airbags to deploy, but Slane's sky carrier then begins to crash after taking damage to its left wing. Inaho then climbs into the cockpit of his KG-6 on the truck, while Rayat begins to drive erratically trying to avoid Trilram, but he slings some debris towards her, causing her to stop. Rayat then tells the girl to get out of the car and run, but she says mama didn't raise no bitch, and begins to get out of the car. The girl then walks right up towards Trilram, and condemns the actions he has taken before transforming and revealing her true identity as Princess of Salem. Completely shaken, Trilram is in disbelief. Inko then begins to fire shots towards him, but instead of the bullets hitting him, they are aimed for the bridge, which collapses a section of it, and causes him to fall into the water below. Calm, using a drone, then reports back to Inaho about a spot on the cataphract where water isn't being constantly disintegrated. Inaho then races towards Trilram, and using his knife, stabs into the section where the barrier isn't up, before completely unloading inside of him. Afterwards, everyone celebrates their victory over the Martians, and Slane, from the distance, sees through his binoculars that the princess is in fact not dead. After the battle, Slane discovers that Trilram is also, in fact, not dead, and after expressing his joy to Trilram that the princess is still alive, Trilram states that he knows she is, but the next chance he gets, he'll make sure to fix that for good. Shaken at hearing Trilram's intent to murder the princess, Slane takes out his gun, and Trilram gets unloaded on for the second time in one day. Inaho and his friends then barely manage to escape from the incoming bombardment that was sent by Sarsbaum, which completely destroys the Shinawara district. Afterwards, Inaho and the princess are then finally, properly introduced, as she sheds her disguise and shows off her regal attire. Salem believes that if she is able to prove to her grandfather, the Emperor of Vers, that she is alive and well, the war will immediately cease. Inoho then informs her about how good of a job the Martians have done of destroying the communication systems on Earth, offering instead to take her to a location which will let her contact the Verse Empire. Elsewhere, back at Crucio's castle, Slane informs Crucio that, yeah, Trilram actually died in the bombardment and I totally didn't shoot him. Crucio, feeling aggression from Sarsborn due to the bombardment in his designated area, orders one of his knights, Vlad, to hunt down Inoho and his group to avenge the princess. Slane, because he's stupid and also doesn't know if Crucio is in on the false flag operation, doesn't decide to inform him about the princess's survival of the attack. Instead, he goes the complete other way, demanding the opportunity to go into battle to avenge the princess's death. Sometime later, as Inoho and their group gets to where they need to be, the UFE finds themselves under the assault of the previously mentioned Vlad, who is piloting a cataphract using its Aldnoah drive to produce a plasma sword, which, and it should be a surprise to no one at this point, easily manages to cut through the defending KG-7s. It then begins to approach the ship that the kids are on, the engines of which have been damaged from the battle leading to Maruto and Yuki trying to fix them. Inoho, formulating a plan, then goes out to face Vlad with the help of Inko and Calm. Inoho quickly begins to lose, barely managing to hold Vlad's arm from swinging down onto him, when Inko, who went up top to the factory's controls, swings down a shipping container which smashes into the side of Vlad's mech, doing severe damage to his viewing station of the cockpit. Take note everyone, when armor-piercing, high-explosive 75mm rounds fail to do any damage to something, shipping container. A fully armed battleship then finally gets in range of their location, and begins to open fire onto Vlad. Inoho then orders a retreat, and Vlad also agrees with this sentiment. We then get a flashback to 5 years ago, where we see a stray rocket crashing into one of the castles on the planet of Mars. We see that Slane, in some kind of vessel, was inside the rocket that crashed, and he begins coughing up water as he hangs. Conveniently, Princess Salem was close by and is able to give him CPR. Except, Princess, I don't think that's how you resuscitate someone. Oh nope, don't mind me. Just keep sucking down that water, you freaky little bitch. Back to the present. On Mars, the Emperor learns of the assassination of his granddaughter, but having a few actual brain cells calls for a ceasefire until he learns what really happened. Elsewhere, Inoho and his friends take some time to rest aboard the battleship, while Princess Salem is tossing up whether or not she should reveal her identity to everyone fully. Rayat, overhearing this, disagrees, stating that doing so would most likely paint a large target on her back for the Martian Knights. Vlad then returns to the fight, ignoring the call for a ceasefire due to not wanting to end on a loss. I can respect that. And he is now doubly dangerous due to the fact that instead of one plasma sword, he has two. He eliminates a few KG-7s before his true target. Inoho in a KG-6 arrives and challenges him. As Vlad goes in for strikes against Inoho, Inoho instead grabs the arms of Vlad's mech. He makes a request for the bridge of the crew to tilt the ship. Going along with Inoho's plan, the order is given, and while still holding onto Vlad, they begin to slide towards the water. Now these plasma swords have been shown to cut through anything with ease. Why would Vlad not just give a slight flick of the wrist and completely cut through Inoho's mech? Anyway, Inoho's plan manages to work and they both get sent into the water, with Inoho ejecting before fully falling in. Unfortunately for Vlad though, his plasma swords and cataphract engine falling into the water causes an incredible steam explosion, destroying both the KG-6 and Vlad himself. Meanwhile, Slane, using the audience chamber, digitally transports himself to the Emperor's room, trying to inform him about the princess not being truly dead, and explaining that this is a plot from the Knights to invade Earth. Thinking he's convinced the Emperor, Slane leaves. However, immediately after, Sarsborn arrives, claiming that Slane is helping the Terrans and trying to feed the Emperor false information, and the Emperor is just like, oh yeah, war's back on I guess. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It only takes a second and it really helps me out.